And in essence, what this means is that the prosperity that the world would reach in 2030 would at best be delayed by a few months or the maximum of a year. And this, incidentally, this kind of mitigation will also be accompanied by several co-benefits: health benefits from reduced air pollution, much greater energy security, much greater rural employment because you'll have more distributed and decentralized sources of energy production, higher agricultural production, reduced pressure on natural ecosystems, because otherwise the impacts of climate change would impact on these negatively. So therefore, the co-benefits actually provide a very strong rationale for policies that would be no regrets in nature and would reduce mitigation costs. We know that there's substantial potential for the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions in the coming decades, and we can certainly be able to reduce emissions far below current levels. We also know that all the technologies and means that you require for beginning this process of mitigation are available with us or will be commercialized very, very soon. But if we want to develop new technologies, we need a mix of policies that would provide the incentives and disincentives by which we move to a low-carbon economy. And this clearly means that we need to put policies in place first before we expect the kind of technological responses that we need. What would these policies and practices be? Research and development, demonstration projects, appropriate energy infrastructure investments, because if you set up a thermal power plant, it has an economic life of 30 or 40 years. You're not going to junk it after 5 years, and therefore you've got to keep that perspective in mind. You need regulations and standards, for instance, in the case of automobiles, in the case of buildings. Taxes and charges are going to be important, and most importantly, changes in lifestyles and consumption patterns. I've made myself notorious by going around and suggesting to people that they eat less meat, because the meat cycle, as it is practiced today, is extremely intensive in greenhouse gas emissions. And I once got an email from somebody criticizing me for doing that and saying that since I wasn't eating meat, I wasn't getting adequate nutrition and my brain was atrophying. And that's why I was saying all this. And the Lord Mayor of London, a great intellectual by the name of Boris Johnson, actually wrote an op-ed piece in the Daily Telegraph, and pretty large space that was covered by him, in which he said that he's actually going to gorge himself with more meat because I'm advocating eating less. And I have a little blog in which I responded to that. And I said, well, since he cycles to work every day, maybe if he eats more meat, he'll cycle a little more and could possibly qualify for the Olympics, which are going to be held in his city of London. So, but anyway, the point I'd like to make is lifestyle changes are going to be important. And we need an effective price signal on carbon. President-elect Obama's plan is very inspiring, and I don't need to go through all this, but I think he's basing even the revival of the economy on moving towards a greener economic system. And I hope he's able to implement what he's set out to do. I believe it's very important for the US to lead and to get engaged in the whole process of mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, because otherwise we won't reach global stabilization targets. And I think US industry, if it really knows what's good for it, will have to be part of this effort, because otherwise the rest of the world will move to low carbon products. We've seen that in General Motors, where the saying was, what's good for General Motors is good for America. Well, General Motors is going bankrupt, and I hope that doesn't happen to America. But on the other hand, other automobile manufacturers had the wisdom and the vision to be able to move ahead with new technology, and they've clearly got a much larger share of the market. And I think it's important for the US to lead. I believe in international relations, climate change is going to be critically important, and I think if the US wants to lead, as I hope it does, it's critically important that the US is seen to be in the lead. And finally, this is what Chief Seattle said: man did not weave the web of life, he's merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. I think it's extremely important for us to ensure that the future of humanity and all living species is protected by our taking the right kinds of steps today. And I assure you, this is not going to lead to a reduction in economic or human welfare. If anything, it would probably enhance it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Pachauri. The host country at a conference like the upcoming climate negotiation in Copenhagen plays a very important role, really responsible in some way for ensuring that negotiations move forward, and obviously has a specific interest in having the conference named after its city be a great success. Of course, millions of people around the world know Kyoto, the name Kyoto these days, not because of the wonderful cultural traditions and artifacts in that city, but because it was, in fact, the place that the Kyoto Protocol was signed. I had a chance to hear the Danish Prime Minister at a speech he gave in New York late last year, and I must say that it is clear that the Prime Minister himself and the Danish government are really rising to this challenge and working very hard, and it's been, I think, the Prime Minister himself has been very articulate in expressing how urgent it is that we get a strong agreement. And Denmark, of course, has been a leader in sustainable energy for a long time. I think I first went to visit the wind turbines in Denmark first in the early 1980s, at a time at which wind power was essentially unheard of in almost any other part of the world. So we're very pleased today to have an Undersecretary of State from Denmark and the Chief Climate Advisor to the Prime Minister, Bo Lidegaard, with us today. Bo is someone who is well known in climate policy circles, has been playing an active role now for some time. He's held a number of positions previously in the Danish government, but the thing that I found most compelling about his biography is that he in fact was born in Greenland, which of course is really ground zero when it comes to experiencing the effects of climate change. So I guess you literally have this issue in your blood, Bo, and we're really looking forward to your thoughts on how we help you make Copenhagen a great success.